Hello. This is the first of two tutorials that describe how to configure ZEDI so that it can exchange transactions with your CargoWise systems. The topics covered are configuring ZEDI to exchange transactions with CargoWise, and using metadata extracts to make life easier when handling CargoWise transactions. This tutorial deals with the first one. We're going to work through an example based on two CargoWise environments, one for live transactions and the other for test transactions. CargoWise sends and receives transactions via an interface called eAdaptor. It's useful to understand a little bit about how it works before we start. In this example, our live CargoWise environment license code is ZBL-WOC-PRD, and the test environment license is ZBL-WOC-TST. Each of these has an eAdaptor interface attached to it. These interfaces have a URL like those shown here. Your ZEDI environment also has an eAdaptor interface, and again, it has a URL like this. When one of your CargoWise environments has a transaction it needs ZEDI to process, it connects to the ZEDI URL and delivers the file. Similarly, when ZEDI has a transaction for CargoWise, it will use the appropriate URL to deliver it. The connections between CargoWise and ZEDI make use of the HTTPS protocol, so the transactions are securely encrypted as they pass between the two systems. If the eAdapters in your CargoWise environments have not yet been configured, then this will need to be done as a first step. Instructions for doing it can be found in the CargoWise document Technical Guide eAdapter SDK.pdf, or you may choose to ask your CargoWise supplier to set it up for you. Either way, the things you need to determine are the user ID that ZEDI will need to use in order to connect to your eAdapter, the password ZEDI will need to use, and the URLs for the production and test eAdapters. The first two are specified in the eServices/eAdapter inbound authentication section of the CargoWise registry. For this example, we're going to say that the user ID will be ZEDI and the password will be Caro Emerald. The URL is commonly in this format. Enterprise is the first three characters of your CargoWise license, and Origin is the last three characters. In our case, the license is ZBL-WOC-PRD, so the URL for the production license would be this. We're going to set up ZEDI so that it will be able to deliver transactions into the two eAdapters on CargoWise. The first thing we need is a trading partner to represent CargoWise as a whole. It will look something like this. Note that the default communications method is set to eAdapter. The details of the eAdapters on your CargoWise environments are entered in the communications section. Set the communications method to eAdapter and complete the URL in the production section. The recipient is ZBL-WOC-PRD for our live environment, and the sender will be the user ID that was set up in the CargoWise registry. Now enter the corresponding password in the password field. Do the same thing for the test CargoWise environment in the test section using the test URL, recipient, sender ID and password. Once this has been done, ZEDI has everything it needs to be able to send transactions into CargoWise, so save the changes. We now need to configure ZEDI so that it can receive transactions from CargoWise. This is done in the eAdapter section of the communications page. Invent a suitable password for the CargoWise password field. This will be the password that your CargoWise environments will need to provide in order to successfully deliver a transaction into ZEDI, so make a note of it. Now use the Add row to add your production license code to the list of IDs. The ID type will be internal, as this is an ID that is owned by your business. IDs can also be defined as external. These will be used when using ZEDI as an eAdapter gateway, but that's the subject of another video. We don't need to provide a password for the internal IDs because ZEDI will expect the one entered at the top of the page to be used. Since this is the live ID, we'll set the mode to prod. Now set the trading partner you created to represent CargoWise as a whole, and click the Add button. Do the same thing for the test license code, but this time set the mode to test. You'll now need to set up the outbound eAdapter in CargoWise. Again, instructions for doing this can be found in the CargoWise document technical guide eAdaptor SDK.pdf, or you may choose to get your CargoWise supplier to set it up for you. Whoever does this will need the password. This is the one you entered on the eAdaptor settings screen in ZEDI, and the URL for your eAdapter. The URL will be in this format. So, if your service provider's domain was zirconblue.com and your environment code was ZB, the URL would be this. Note that the URL begins with HTTPS rather than HTTP. This is important as it ensures that the transactions are sent securely between CargoWise and ZEDI. In CargoWise, the eAdaptor outbound messages service task needs to be enabled and running. The password needs to be entered into the CargoWise registry under eServices eAdaptor outbound password. The URL also needs to be entered into the CargoWise registry under eServices outbound eAdapter service URL. Within CargoWise, you can now trigger a test message by setting up a trigger which sends a universal XML to the ZEDI eAdapter. Once again, information on how to do that can be found in the CargoWise document Technical Guide eAdaptor SDK.pdf. CargoWise will always use the 9-character license code as the user ID to log on to the ZEDI eAdapter. ZEDI will validate that ID by comparing it to the list of valid license codes you set up in the eAdapter section. If the user ID is not recognised, then the file will be rejected and it will appear in CargoWise as a transmission error or something similar. ZEDI will also check the password CargoWise provided to ensure it matches the one entered in the settings section within ZEDI. If everything's OK, then the file will be added to the list of transactions as a file from the partner you selected when you added the license code in the eAdapter section. ZEDI can then perform whatever sequence of actions need to be done in order to process the transaction. Now, typically the first of these will be a metadata extract. This will identify the final recipient of the transaction, the consignee for example, and the type of data the transaction it contains, such as forwarding console. This metadata will then allow the transaction to be accurately processed through ZEDI, and that's the subject of the next tutorial. Transactions can be sent to your CargoWise system by setting up a post-transaction action. In this example, we're going to send an inbound accounting invoice transaction from Ace Vegetables that has a condition of mapped. The action we're using is called post-transaction, and we've selected our CargoWise partner as the trading partner it will be sent to. You may remember that we set up two CargoWise license codes when we created this partner, one for the live system and the other for test. ZEDI will choose which one to use based on the mode of the transactions. So live transactions go to the live license and test transactions go to the test license. We've left the communications method as partner default. When we created the CargoWise partner, we set the default communications type to eAdapter, so the transaction will be delivered using the recipient, sender and password entered on the partner definition. If we change this from partner default to eAdapter, then a button called Additional Settings will appear. This allows us to override the recipient and sender, and that can be useful when you have multiple licenses and you need to ensure that the costs are assigned correctly within CargoWise. The recipient and sender can either be set explicitly, or you can use fields from the metadata to set them. For example, if your transactions have an item of metadata called CW recipient, which contains the required recipient ID, then you can set the recipient to meta CW recipient rather than set it to a fixed value. Once the action has been performed, the history of the transaction will record whether or not it was accepted by CargoWise. If it was, then an AED0002 entry will record the tracking ID that was used. If the file couldn't be delivered, then the history will record detailed information about the cause of the problem. Thank you.